Prime Minister Mark Carney got rid of the consumer carbon tax we were paying at the pump, but the other big carbon price on major industrial emitters is sticking around.
So our plan to start with is to axe the entire carbon tax, including the industrial tax.
There's a value to that industrial carbon tax in the predictability of that tax and the certainty around.
The election result leaves Premier Susan Holt with a decision to make. Last fall, in her own campaign, she promised to redesign and toughen the provincial carbon price the Higgs government put in place on big emitters to comply with federal standards.
We think that the industrial price needs to be robust. We did have a bit of a pause, I'll say, or a slowdown of the work on what New Brunswick's approach to emissions and climate would be, given we weren't clear on what the federal direction would be. And so now that the election is finished and we can expect to see a clearer sense of where this government is going to go on emissions caps and on the industrial price.
New Brunswick's pricing system sets an emissions standard for big emitters per unit of production and requires them to lower that amount every year. Emitters that stay below their standard earn credits they can sell in a credit market, earning them money. Emitters that go above the standard must buy credits, costing them money. This system only applies to a small percentage of their emissions.
She needs to increase the coverage so that instead of 10% of the emissions being priced, we finally eventually get to 100% of the emissions being priced.
Kuhn also says the rate emitters pay should go up faster. In her State of the Province speech, Holt set out a target for reducing emissions relative to economic growth, but with exporters facing tariff uncertainty, she says she has to balance emissions goals with keeping industry competitive.
We need a bit more time to get the next level of clarity from the federal government before we can finalize how New Brunswick is going to align with that.
Carney has talked about moving revenue from the industrial tax to consumers. Beyond that, it's not clear what he wants from the pricing system ahead of a scheduled review next year.
Updating and fixing the federal benchmark to sort of define the minimum standards for industrial pricing in the provinces is going to be a big priority, and it should be a big priority. That's an important policy, and it needs to work to its full potential.